All right, puppets. Puppets and puppets.
That's so groovy with no balloon.
It's groovy.
You boys can play that instantly.
Amen.
What day is it? What is it? What time is it?
Oh, what time is it now?
Oh, what time is
Where's
it?
my watch?
Hey, kid. What time is it?
Time for Gezintahait Street.
It is time for Gezintahait Street. And the story for tonight is titled From a Young Man, an Old Man. The Alter Rebbe once gave a Hasidic discourse. It was so difficult to understand that the Hasidim asked him to say it over a second time. The repetition was given in the Rebbe's room, and only a select group of elder Hasidim were permitted to enter. Rabbi of Hamel, who was a young married man, stood by the door. After the door had already closed, the Alter Rebbe opened it and invited Rabbi Isaac to enter, saying that from a young man, an old man could emerge. The Alter Rebbe meant that even by entering the room as a young man, he would nevertheless emerge with the intellectual maturity of an elder. Rabbi Isaac entered and heard the discourse. What's more, he absorbed it thoroughly to the point where he can recall it in detail over 40 years later. Not only did he remember all the details, even remembered the marginal comments of the Alter Rebbe that were not part of the discourse. How was this young Rabbi Isaac able to grasp such a difficult mind? Our Rebbe says that the Alter Rebbe revealed the hidden power and potential of Rabbi Isaac's intellect that came from the essence level of the young scholar's soul. At the time that the Alter Rebbe was saying the discourse, his little grandson, Menachem Mendel, who would become the future Tzemach Tzedek, was running around dragging potatoes on strings, pretending they were tefillin. When someone shushed the little boy for disturbing the men, the Alter Rebbe said, "Let the boy play. He understands every word, and one day you will know that he truly understood every word." Sure enough, when the Tzemach Tzedek accepted the position of Rebbe 40 years later, he recited that same mimer that the Alter Rebbe was saying, and he recited it 40 years later, word for word. And we know that he actually did it word for word because Reb Isaac remembered the discourse. In relating the story, our Rebbe notes that the end of the first book of Tanya expresses how Hashem, the Shekhinah, is a consuming fire. He then connects it to the last chapters of Tanya, where a Jew is compared to a candle, which is not a consuming fire. A candle glows with the light of the Shekhinah compared to a candle, not a consuming fire, which glows with the light of the Shekhinah, that candle of the Jewish soul. In this example, Torah and mitzvahs of this candle, Torah and mitzvahs are the oil, while his animal soul is the wick. In this way, the Jew turns into a fit vessel to shine the light of godliness. The Rebbe explains further that in the candle metaphor, Torah and mitzvahs provide the glow of the candlelight. It's the oil. On the higher level, speech and action in Torah and mitzvahs generate a brighter fire, which is typical of wood. However, neither is quite yet a consuming fire. The consuming fire is emunah, is faith. And faith in the Rebbe is what empowered Rabbi Isaac to reveal the hidden essential power of intellect of his soul by following the Alter Rebbe's instructions to walk into the room. Once the Rebbe said in the Sikha that if a Jew truly resolves to accomplish something that's out of the range of his God-given talents and capabilities, then Hashem will open new channels of strength for him from above. So even if you know you can't accomplish because you don't have the strength and you don't have the talent, if you really want it to happen, Hashem will give you those powers. I guess that's similar to Reb Isaac receiving the level of intellect from the essence of his soul from the Alter Rebbe. Those of us poor and das can see the difference from the story of a very accomplished Torah scholar like Reb Isaac, who even in his youth was considered a genius, and the difference to a Rebbe. Reb Isaac needed special powers to be opened for him by the Alter Rebbe in order to manifest mature intellect, while the Tzemach Tzedek was able to absorb and memorize that very difficult mimer as a 3-year-old kid. Are we up yet? Should we have a niggun now?
Yeah, sounds like a good time for a niggun.
Sounds like a good time for a Nikolai or Walker.
Ooh, a Nikolai for one, boys. Da 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 di dam, da 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 di dam, la la di dam, ya ya. Da 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 di dam, da 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 di dam, la la di dam. Da 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 di dam, da 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 di dam, la la di dam, ya ya. Da 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 di dam, da 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 di dam, la la di dam. Hey da 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 di dam, la la di dam, ya ya. Da da di di da di di da 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 di di da. Da 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 di di da di di da da di di ma ya ya. Da da di di da di di da da ma ya di di da. Da 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 di da di da da di di ma ya di di ma ya. da la da di dam, da la da di dam, la la di di dam. Da la da di dam, da la da di dam, la la di di my yam. Da la da di dam, da la da di dam, la di di dam. Hey la 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 di di da di di dam, la di di ay yam. La la di di da di di dam, la di di dam. Da la da di di da di di dam, la di di ay yam. Da la di di da di di dam, la di di dam. Da la di dam, da la di dam, la di di dam, la di dam, la di di dam. Da 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 di dam, da 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 di dam, la di di ay yam. Da la di dam, da la di dam, achti ho.
All right. Da 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 dee da.
Yeah, those are great lyrics to that song, really. You know, they rhyme too. A lot da da dee dum and ta da da dee dum, they rhyme.
So last week, Gimel Aleph regaled us by explaining the depth of Chachma. And he explained to us that the depth of Chachma is not a Chachma at all. It does not even really exist as an entity. It is only the opening of the mind to be able to receive the Chachma from the Chachma generator called the Koach HaMaster. How does that sound, Gimel Aleph?
I think it sounds great. That sounds like it sounds exactly like what we were talking about.
Exactly.
I was there, you know.
Yeah. So tonight, we're going to look at the revealed Chachma, how it flashes into the brain. It will not be the depth of Chachma anymore. It will be called the width of Chachma. You have it, Gimel Aleph?
Yeah. One second. I'm in the middle of texting my friend Omak.
So
There we go. He's watching now. He always watches. A very good friend of ours. He was letting me know how the volume is sounding. It's sounding good. Okay. Good. So now let's pull up. Let's press the button. Hi, Omak Kadison. How are you? And all the other watchers. Rebecca Hill is watching, and many of our friends. We're so happy to see all of you. Let's see. We press the button. Share the screen. This is share the screen. We pick this one. This one looks like some Hasidus. So press on that one, see what happens. Aha! The width of the Chachmas. That's what we're holding now, but it's
I
already.
think so.
Okay, great. So now the width of the Chachma. The width of Chachma, of the wisdom, right? Which, if you remember the Chachma, the wisdom, that's the flash of the idea into the mind, the first introduction into the mind, like the lightning strike. So this is the width of the wisdom is the actual flowing out of the seichel, like from the ground as it becomes revealed, meaning as it first comes out of like the koyach hamaskil, from the idea generated.
So I understand that we have two separate metaphors. One metaphor is how water comes bubbling out of the ground.
Yeah.
So the spring that comes out of the ground, that will be like the revealed Chachma. The other metaphor is how the Chachma generator generates the idea into the brain. For one reason or another, you need both of these metaphors. And I think you need both of them because how the Chachma generator generates the flash of seichel into the brain, it comes from nothing. All of a sudden, there's a flash of an idea. On the other hand, The idea is a continuous unfolding thing that will be like a spring of water that comes out of the ground. Therefore, you need both metaphors. That's the way I understand why you have to have both metaphors.
Why you have to have the two of them? Because each one teaches you something the other one doesn't properly show.
And in every godly topic, one metaphor is not enough to cover all the angles of the godly dimensions.
Okay. So now let's look.
So once we have the flash of Chachma in the brain, which is the width of Chachma.
Yeah. Then the first bubble living up, right, is like the spark, or like the spark of that. That's the two examples, and that's the width, right? And then we have it comes, but this comes right from the kesser of Chachma.
That will be the depth. The kesser of Chachma will be the
this
depth.
Will be the depth, right? That's the depth, and then this is the width. In other words, the depth is when is how it's receiving from on top of it, and the width is like its actual self,
actual revelation,
the actual Chachma, the actual
right.
way
the depth that's not revealed.
Right, it's hidden. Okay, and that's that part. And then the where are we now? So the revealed Chachma is the Yud of Chachma. But when you look at the Yud in its details, we see three parts. There's a thorn on top, and then a wide part, and then a leg that's coming down. And the thorn that's on top is the depth. In other words, because it's pulling up, it's what's receiving from on top of it. It points to up. And the wide part is the width of Chachma, the part that's revealed. And then the little chupchik, the little leg coming down, that's going to be the length of Chachma, right? What's the length of Chachma?
The bina of Chachma.
The bina of Chachma is the length.
So you have kesser of Chachma is the depth.
The depth.
You have Chachma of Chachma is the width.
The width, and then bina of Chachma
is the length.
So bina, but this is not an actual bina, which is like under Chachma. This is the bina of the Chachma.
Meaning the ability of Chachma to explain itself.
Yeah, it's
into
like,
a bina.
Into a bina, which will be the actual explanation.
Right.
Okay, this makes sense, Mitzvah. And then bina, like we said, is the dynamic descriptions and explanations and all the reasons of the idea of the Chachma itself. Even though it's not really the Chachma itself, it's like how he said, like a clothing to the Chachma.
No, he's talking bina now, not bina of Chachma.
Yeah, I'm saying actual bina is like it's not the Chachma itself; it's like a clothing to the Chachma, right?
Correct.
This is what the Alter Rebbe calls it also, a clothing on the Chachma. That it because it's explanations, it's not the essence of the Chachma; it's explanations that's around the Chachma.
Correct.
Okay, and the potential to bring them out in a way of expansion. This is in bina. Right, in the explanation of bina, so the ability to bring it, the ability to for the chachma to go into that bina is the bina of chachma. So it's not the explanation yet; it's the ability of chachma to be able to go into an explanation.
Called haven of chachma.
Haven bechachma, yeah. This is meaning like the bina of chachma. Now the length of chachma.
That's the bina of Chachma, the length of Chachma.
Yeah, that's right. The bina of Chachma is symbolized by that's the bottom leg of the yud. It points down because it's giving just like the top one. The top point receives from on top of it, and the bottom point gives to the bottom of it. And this is the bottom leg of the yud, and it symbolizes Chachma. On a more specific level, the lower leg is bina of Chachma, right? Because the yud is Chachma in general. And then the top, the middle, and the bottom of the yud is the three parts of Chachma. So now the source of where does this length of Chachma come from? The source of the length of Chachma, of bina of Chachma, is higher than the actual body of Chachma. Why? Because it's almost like a reflection, like the bottom point is coming from the top point. So it receives from the top. You know, B'tzal, it's interesting. The Alter Rebbe actually discusses this very thing in Likutei Torah this week. It's a big hashkacha pratis. It's amazing.
Like when you write a letter Yud,
Yeah.
you start with the thorn on top.
Yeah,
So that's how you can get the length coming down.
coming
because you have
down,
to
it comes
start
from the point on top.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is because its source is in the top. Like the source of Bina of Chachma is in the Keser of Chachma, it's in the crown of Chachma, in the top of Chachma, in the depth. Right? Which is higher than the actual.
to the source
Yeah.
of Chachma.
And this is higher than the actual Chachma of Chachma. So the Bina is actually coming from
The
a higher
width
source.
is the actual Chachma.
Yeah. But the length is coming from the depth, which is higher than the width.
Right. From the Kesser
Yeah.
of Chachma. Right.
So the reason that Bina of Chachma has its source higher than Chachma of Chachma is because proportional to the depth, the emptying of the vessel of the mind in preparation to receive the wisdom from the Koyach HaMaskil, from the idea generator, right, is the nullification of self as a preparation of bringing the Chachma into an explanation in Bina. Meaning that in order to make one a place, for the person to empty himself and make himself nullified, he must first nullify to receive. In order to nullify himself, to give, he has to first nullify himself to receive. In other words, I think what we're saying is, in order to be a good teacher, you have to be a good student first.
Okay.
Something like that.
That may be. Let's see if I can, if I understand it in my own way.
Yeah.
In order to bring the idea into an explanation in words and letters,
Yeah. So
there has to be a nullification to the depth of the Chachma, the depth of the idea. Because if one is not nullified to the depth of the idea, then he cannot be nullified to give himself away to bring down the idea. In order to receive the idea, one has to give himself away. In order to give the idea, one has to give himself away. And the two giving away is really one thing.
So that's why the source of the lower throne is in the higher throne.
I think so.
Because they both nullifying, only one is nullifying to the thing on top, and one is nullification to the thing on bottom. Okay, weiter. Share on again. Okay.
These natives are restless. They want us to do more.
No, keep going.
So this is why in the days of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Moses, wise men could be found, chachomim, like people who had chachma, because their level was the width of the yud.
In other words, they had the Ten Commandments. They actually got the revealed.
They got the chachma. It was revealed to them.
Yeah.
But navoinim, meaning people who have this having the chachma, the bina of chachma, like we said before. In other words, the length of chachma, these could not be found, even though the people who had the width of chachma could be found. The people who had chachma of chachma. Why? Because the power to bring down new chachma to bina is a higher power than chachma itself. Right? That's actually why we see by King Solomon. By King Solomon, what's the praise? The praise that they give him, right, in Malachim, in the Kings, right? It says, it doesn't say because he understood so good. The praise, it says that he gave 3,000 allegories. In other words, the praise was that he explained so good, because this was a bigger praise than just that he understood so good. Because the bigger thing than how great his understanding was that he had this having of Chachma, he could bring it down to a very low level. He had a very strong being too.
I would like to give an example of that. Every year, the Rebbe would take a mimer of Basal Lagani, and he would come up with new Chachma and Bina from the original mimer from the Rebbe, because the Rebbe is in Novam. So he was able to reach the depth and be nullified to it, and he would be able to bring it down lower than how it was given in the original.
I like that Mashal B'Tzalel. It's a good one. I was there, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, well, so why is this? Because the power to bring down a new Chachma into Bina, why is it higher? Because the source of having the Chachma, the length of Chachma, right, the Bina of Chachma, comes from the depth, from the top throne, right, the crown of Chachma, Kesser of Chachma, which is the source from where the Chachma itself comes. So that's why the Bina can do it. And through this power, he can come up even with a new Seichel, like Betzal was just saying about the allegory about with the Rebbe. He can come up with a new Seichel that the teacher himself didn't even say. Out of what the Seichel, out of the thoughts of the teacher, he can come up with new thoughts that even the teacher didn't say. And furthermore, he will be able to come up with new particulars in explaining this idea of that he learned from the teacher, which also could be explanations that the teacher did not say these explanations, meaning that he can widen the width of Bina, make it more wider, right? And giving a more detailed explanation, even than the teacher that he learned it from gave in the first place, right? And this is called a novin, somebody who understands a thing within a thing, davar mitech davar, a thing from within a thing. And this level, even though Chachamim, they found, the vein they didn't find. Where are you going more? We're going to do a nigga now. You ready?
Oh, yeah.
One more nigga.
Oh, one more day. No.
You got one in you?
Whatever.
Let's go. Which one do you want to do here? By the way you leave it helps to plug it in the wall. Just
Yeah, the
saying.
thing is, and that's
Just saying, Lee. When you plug it in the wall, the people can hear you better. This is proof that sound waves travel in the wall.
I'm done.
You good? Okay, I will continue.
Okay.
Okay, Lee, play something. Bezalel, refuah shlema to completely.
Amen.
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 Which one is that? Hey, ay, 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 da, ay, ay, da, ya. Hey, ay, 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 da, ya. Hey, ay, 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 da, ay, ay, da, ya. Hey, ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Hey, Mosai, Kosima. Hey, Lidisha, your foot, so man, say, Chavutza. Ay, 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 Mosai, hey, Kosima, hey, Lidisha, your foot, so man, say, Chavutza. Hey, Mosai, 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 Kosima, hey, Lidisha, your foot, so Mosai, 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 Kosima, hey, Lidisha, your foot, so ay, 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 One second, wait. I'm going to move now it's just me and you. So I'm going to move the camera over here. So for me and you, wait. This I can see. This I can see what kind of trouble you have. Beautiful. Wait a minute. No, not yet. Not yet. Now it's me and Lee over here. Okay, good. Ready, Lee, to learn some Hasidus?
Yes.
That niggin, by the way, my dear holy tired brothers and sisters, was a Mosai Kosi Mar. When will the master come? When will Moshiach come? When your wellsprings, the wellsprings of Hasidis, will spread outwards, which looks kind of like what we're doing here. Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now, I'm old. I'm not so loud. Do you want to read this or what? People over there. Shah Stiller, we're gonna learn some Hasidus. Okay, ready? Here we go. So now, now to understand the three levels of Bina, the depth, the width, and the length of Bina, because we just spoke about the depth, width, and length of Chokhmah. The depth, the Omek of Bina, is its essential unification with the Chokhmah itself. Just like a slave, just like by the Chokhmah, its depth is how it receives from the idea generator. So also the depth of the Bina, the depth is how it receives. How it receives, the Bina receives in the Chokhmah. Like every depth, right, in intellect, it has nothing for itself. The depth is whenever we spoke about the nothing, like the corner, it doesn't exist. And at least not in and of itself. It is merely a connection between two things. Kind of like Led Zeppelin. Just kidding. Anyways, like every depth, right, it's just a connector. And it connects the Bina to the Chokh. The Bina, which is explaining something, has to be explaining something. If it doesn't have anything to explain, it can't explain. So the Chokhmah is what it's explaining, and the Bina is explaining it. And the depth of the Bina is how it's receiving, is nullifying itself to receive the Chokhmah, which to explain. Smart stuff. Don't worry, it's not mine, it's from like the Rebbe or something. So this is what it is. It joins itself to the Chokhmah, right? So completely that its only existence is the Seichel to which it joins itself. It is a nothing of the something. In other words, it's the nothing, right, of the something that is Bina. Because Bina is a something already. Because Bina is an explanation, so it's felt. Right? But the depth is a nothing, so it's a nothing of the something. That should be the name of our band label. We should call it the nothing of the something. Anyways, and this is also called Eimek HaMusag, the depth of Bina, the Eimek HaMusag, the depth of the grasper. Because it's grasping the Chokhmah. It is the depth of the explanation, or we can also call it the point of the explanation. In other words, like sometimes somebody will explain something and you say, "What's your point?"
Kind of like now.
Yeah, and you say, "What's your point?"
What's your point?
What's your point? So my point is that the Bina is explaining a Chokhmah. The Chokhmah being the point. So when you're asking somebody, "What's the point of his explanation?" What you're trying to figure out is what's the Chokhmah that's behind this Bina he's ranting about, right? Because he's saying voids. These voids are Bina. What's your point means I'm not understanding the Chokhmah that's behind your Bina, right? So this is the point of the explanation, the depth of Bina. This level can be understood by the example of a person who has a good brain and a logical understanding. But when he hears something explained at the length, he only understands the logic of the explanation, but he doesn't get the essence. Like there's people that can think about each thing in all the different ways, but they're missing the point.
You mean people who have got all the tools but no toolbox?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I'm familiar with those types. Sometimes I even see one in the mirror every now and then.
Yep, yeah, we all can see it in the mirror sometimes. It's funny, the mirror is a very strange thing. It shows us different things every time. Anyways, so we can understand this, that like by a person like that, he doesn't get the essence of the Chacham being explained. Right? That in other words, he doesn't grasp its depth. So even though he has all the voids and all the letters of the long explanation, right? He's not animated from it. He's not excited by it, right? You know what it's like? Imagine somebody who has an audiographic memory, right? And you can recite stuff word for word. You can remember every word somebody said. And you can keep saying it. He's telling you this way and that way and all kinds of things, right? You can say, oh, look, it's Boris Krashina over here. How do we, let me see, how does my sound like? How do I, not that's not what I want. I want this. Open sound settings. Let's see if I can get and sound.
Boris Karshina.
Yeah.
Hello.
Nice, that's fine. No, yeah, here. I want that the same. I want the output to be the speaker.
It didn't start yet.
Oh God, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You can say something. Let me see if I can hear you.
Hello, Gimalala. How you doing today?
Can't hear nothing. It's strange. Let
You
me
hear
see.
me?
Okay, let me look here.
I thought you started already. Oy vey.
The speakers, I have the headset. This thing is okay, looks good. It is going in that way. And the right one going
It's very silly. How you're doing all this by yourself, Gimalala. I didn't know you have to do this.
I see your mouth moving. I don't see. Anyway, let me finish this part of the Chassidus, and then we'll see if we can get this right. So it's like a person can memorize something like a minor, right? Void for void. But if he doesn't necessarily means he understands it just because he remembered all the voids. Like, but the grasping of the Chachma, dressed in letters and voids of the explanation, is called the depth of being, right? Which is the nullification of the understanding brain, right, the left side, to the Chachma brain on the right side. So as soon as he hears the things from his teacher, the power of Chachma immediately becomes enclosed in the explanation through this depth of understanding, and he feels with his mind the point of the Chachma that reaches down to be dressed in the letters of Bina. In other words, he gets the point. So what happens is he gets the Bina, but he nullifies himself to it. So it's not just voids, he tries to get the depth of it. And then he listens carefully and he hears what's the depth, he hears what is the point.
So he had the length of Bina, but he had not yet acquired the depth until he was explained what he was saying.
Yeah, what is
Like
you say the
memory.
width? Well, the width would be the actual letters. Where's the width? He didn't give that part. Okay, well, I guess that's after.
Am I getting this straight?
Yes, yeah, that's exactly what it is. See, there's one second. Let me see. I'm in the wrong place. Yeah, good. Yeah, so that's exactly what it is. Time out. Tio. Yeah, exactly. So when he hears the particulars of Chachma from his teacher, right? So his power of Chachma is immediately closed in the explanation through the depth of the understanding, the keser of Bina. This is before the length of it. This is the depth. No? In other words, the depth is how he's connecting to the Chachma. Because remember, what does a depth do? It connects. That's what our depth always does. A keser, the crown, the depth connects to the upper one. So the depth of Bina, this is how it works, is that's the nullification he has to listen to his teacher, so that when he's absorbing the voids and listening to the voids, but he's trying to reach the Imika Musad, in other words, he's trying to reach the depth of the teacher, not the depth of Bina. We're talking about the length of Bina, the depth of Bina receives from the length of Chachma. If you remember, we spoke before, the Imika Musad, right? This is, in other words, the length of Chachma comes down, because the teacher is giving a Chachma, it has to come into a Bina, right? But then the other way around has to be also another, from in other words, so the top of the Bina receives from the bottom of the Chachma. And they both have to nullify. The one has to nullify to give itself over, and the other one has to nullify to receive.
But the teacher himself had to nullify himself to receive that learning. He
Well,
also had to nullify himself.
Yeah,
to
but that
give it over.
was him being nullified to his teacher.
Right.
So he's the same thing. But in this case, not only that, he also has to be nullified to his student, not just to his teacher.
You're the teacher, I'm the student.
Let me put this share off. Let's here.
I don't know. What do you want?
What's going on? Why can't I hear Boris Krashina here?
You can't hear me. I hear you.
I don't know how to work the speakers on this thing. Okay. Ready? Which one is that?
Want to do the, want to go around in the circle?
Yeah, let's do that. Go. Okay, you ready? Give me the G. Gezintahait, 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 my friends. Kevin, yay, Gezintahait.